Ramadan Kareem. So we are on the 11th day of Iftar Photo Talk today. And I should say it is the 4th consecutive year of Iftar Photo Talk. So we started Iftar Photo Talk from the year 2021. So in 2019 we started our company. So just before Corona, so I always say our company is a Corona baby. So being a Corona baby, like we got lot of experiences in, creating a lot of ideas to survive, So initially we started with two distribution brands, that is HNY Filter and Leo Photo. With their support, we just entered into the photographers and content creators market. Means like there was nothing else happening over here, around the world. So we were out in the month of June 2020. Connected with plenty of these communities of photographers, content creators, and we started creating some sort of activities called photo walks and photography events. 2021 Jan onwards, we created some kind of concept called photo talks. So photo talk is something like we invite a influencer on board, and then we advertise to get their followers as well as our followers to register and come for an event. Either it is a photo walk, a seminar, a workshop, or just a slide fest or something like that. So creating that kind of event, photo talk, made us so far 212 physical events. That includes the Iftar Photo Talks. So first Iftar Photo Talk happened in 2021. We had 28 days of events continuously. And the second year, we did 30 days continuous. And the last year we had here, this was Cafe 302 that time, and we did 30 events with 30 different content creators. And as I said, like all together, we created 212 events with the support of around 110 individual influencers. So they all are from 30 different countries. So we focus not just a specific part of the world, we talk about the entire community as such. So the kind of approach of BrandConnect is to the entire world. Okay, what is BrandConnect? We connect people, we connect brands, we connect influencers, we connect institutions. So what happens, being a people person, so connection becomes so easy. And when we create these kind of connections, many people are getting great benefits out of it. Like when I say 110 individual influencers, among them, 50 of them were totally newcomers. So during these kind of events, we discuss and we come to know about the strength of those people. And then we invite them, okay, why don't you come on board and create some talk for us? So they come. Initially, they used to have some sort of hesitation. For an example, I give you Nada Badar. She is a newborn photographer.
Oh wow.
Okay, I met her in 2022 in Hampton. That was again during one of the photo talk. So someone introduced her to me saying that she is the best, newborn photographer in UAE. Then, I just had a kind of discussion with her. I asked her, why don't you do a session with us during this year's, that means 2022 Iftar Photo Talk. Initially, what she was telling, oh, no, Shaji, I never been on stage and I won't be in a position to talk in English. Then I said, language doesn't matter. Like when you are going to talk your art, people those who are sitting in front, they understand exactly what you're talking. So she did that. And after that, immediately Nikon grabbed her. See, this is the advantages. Like you all have some sort of inborn talents. And you start showing that talents in a platform like this, and people are watching. And then they pick you. Similarly, like we always used to be there in Taste Dubai, Taste Abu Dhabi, Expo Culinaire, any of these food events. And then always we invite people, those who are newcomers. Always used to be shy. Like they all are great photographers, food photographers, especially food photographers. And they come out and within 1 or 2 sessions, they become famous. And then Joanna will pick them. into her category. I'm talking about some of the influencers who came over here in BrandConnect, and then they become a permanent Nikon school instructors, Canon instructors, and even Sony instructors. So I consider this platform as a platform for everyone. So someone comes up with a kind of idea, like Tracy. She's a professional photographer, but she is just belonging inside here. So I told her, come out, connect with the people. And then like she loves cameras. And she does commercial photo shoot. So one day, you also come here and teach us what are the kind of genres that you have. Okay, so we have 7 brands as distribution brands. That is HNY filters. I think Mohammed is going to talk about that today. Yeah. Leo Photo tripod. They are into carbon fiber tripod. PGY Tech. These are the kind of bags, belts, straps, kind of stuff for cameras, drones, action cameras. Then Toolbox. That's an editing console. So that makes your life so easy in front of computer for editing. And then comes Viconian. They make amazing lights, sliders. And then we have another device called Video Spinny. Like you stand on top of the device that revolves and get a 360-degree kind of thing. Okay, we are your one-stop destination partner for content creation. Not just these brands. If you want to buy anything and everything into photography, you just need to just WhatsApp to us or send a request on our Instagram. We are there 24/7 with you. All right. So support us, follow us, and you all scan that particular this pre-magic thing. Everyone scan. So you'll get your pictures before you leave from here. Okay, that is another great feature that we created during this time. Now, I want to introduce my friend Mohammed, and thanks to Nikon, Jonna, and team to have 2 sessions during these 20 days of Iftar Photo Talk. So we had 1 session from Canon, 2 sessions from Nikon, and 1 session from Sony, and 1 more session is coming from Canon on 29th. And we did 3 sessions on Leo Photo, 3 on HNY, 1 on Toolbox. Likewise, we just filled these 20 days of Iftar. And now, when you look at from tomorrow onwards, like 23 till 31st, we already posted plenty of amazing sessions like the one which we are going to listen right now are coming in. Register, join, and we'll really enjoy the art of photography and content creation here in this place. Mohammed, I met him, I think, very like last week. Very recently I met him. The first day itself, we got connected. The kind of passion, and his wife is here. She's an amazing wedding photographer. Like I was also going through her profile, and then, hats off. You also should come in this platform to teach the kind of expertise that you have one day. Okay, we will give an opportunity to you as well. Okay, so thank you very much for coming, Mohammed, and I really want to see the kind of thing I want to attend your session. Okay,
my pleasure.
All the best wishes, and thank you very much for coming, and keep coming. Joanna, thank you very much. Keep supporting BrandConnect always. As I said, your fiscal year is coming from April till. Yeah, so now we are in March 22nd. Keep $1 million dirhams for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Shaji. Appreciate it. All right. Hello, everyone. Hi. Thank you for coming. My name is Mohammed, and for the past 15 years, I've been a videographer, DOP, and photographer. And today, my session is about how to level up your videography with filters. So if you look on the BTS of sets of movies, TV shows, you'll see, or even like high-end content creation advertisements, you'll see that they have lots and lots of different sets of filters in front of their lens. And you might go, why do you need all of that? Like, I'm shooting the same video, I don't use that. Today we're going to talk about why, when, and how these filters are used. Why do we use them? When should we use them? And when you're using them, how to use them in their best capacity. So, before all of that, we're going to get very technical in this presentation. So I hope you're comfortable with technicality. Let's take it back all the way to the basics. this is something that you all are very familiar with. What is this? The exposure triangle, right? So on the exposure triangle, this is like the very basics of photography and videography, how to control your light, right? So on the triangle, we have ISO, shutter speed, and aperture, right? Let's start with aperture. And I'll get to why I'm talking about this. Bear with me. So, here. So aperture is the amount of light that your lens allows through to the sensor. So as light travels through your lens, it hits the sensor. The amount of light that goes through your lens to your sensor is called the aperture. And it is measured in f-stops. The lower your f-stop, the brighter the image, but then you have a shallow depth of field, less depth of field. So you have more background blur, or bokeh, as they call it. As you close down your aperture, you can see in the back of this lens, you're letting less light in. So you're getting less light hitting the sensor, but you're getting a deeper depth of field. So more stuff in the background or the foreground will be in focus because your depth of field is increasing. Now, as I mentioned, it is measured in f-stops. For example, this lens right here is an f1.8 lens. Does that mean it's a fixed f1.8? No, it goes all the way from f1.8 to f16, but usually on a lens, the minimum aperture that it can go to is mentioned in the name and the specificity. But sometimes you might see this number right here. Does this have a laser? No? Okay. You might see this number right here. It says T1.3. Does anyone know what that is? A T-stop? So, as I said, this lens is an f1.8, right? f1.8 is the amount that the iris of this lens opens. So this lens right here is of f1.8. This is f1.8. This is also an f1.8. So they all open the same amount. But the amount of light that actually gets through the lens and hits the sensor is different, and that is measured in T-stops. So on cinema lenses, you will see that their aperture is not written in f-stops, but rather T-stops. T-stop is a very exact way to measure how much light is actually going through the lens and hitting the sensor. Why does light get lost then, you might ask? So for example, this lens right here, it might be an f1.8, but some light might get lost while traveling through the lens because of the elements, because of the coatings. There's a lot of complex construction that is happening inside the lens. So some light will get lost within the lens. And that is why on cinema lenses, they're measured in T-stops. So this lens that is a f1.8 might actually be a T2.2 or a T2.5 because that amount of light is being lost during the travel of the lens. And in cinema, because you have to be extremely precise with how much light you're getting through your exposure, they write it in T-stops rather than f-stops. So all clear on this point? So then we move on to the ISO. What is the definition of ISO? Can anyone help me with that? Anyone? No? So we've all heard that ISO is basically the sensitivity of the sensor to light, right? And as we increase our ISO, we're increasing the sensitivity of the sensor to light. What is the side effect of increasing your ISO? You get more noise, right? That's the general belief. That's the basic understanding of it. But what if I told you that this is not the whole truth. This is not the whole story. and it's kind of an oversimplification. Let's call it a lie. ISOs in cameras are not all equal. There are cameras that basically only have one true ISO. Everything else, it's fake, doesn't exist. It's all digital. How does that work? So before we get to that, how an image is captured, just we quickly go through it. So a light source hits the sensor, and the sensor converts this light source as photons into electrons. This electron is then, it goes through an AMP, an amplifier, an analog amplifier, which then is changed into a digital value, which then your computer can see, right? It's zeros and ones so that your computer can see the image. Now, there are cameras, so there are three types of ISO systems. There's invariant ISO system, there's variant ISO system, and then there's a new technology called dual native ISO system. So we're going to start with invariant cameras, like the red Komodo right here. Invariant ISO cameras only have one true ISO setting. For example, the red Komodo, the only ISO that the red Komodo has is ISO 800. So basically, the only analog ISO of the red Komodo is 800. Everything else, every other ISO that you choose on the red Komodo is digitally set. So the light that comes into the red Komodo or any camera that has an invariant ISO system is captured at base of whatever their base ISO is. So for example, let's say 800. It's captured at 800, right? And it doesn't matter if on your settings you use 1600, 3200, 6400, doesn't matter. When the light comes in, it is captured at 800. And then while the signal is being turned from analog into digital, the camera writes a metadata file that says, hey, this video or this shot is ISO 6400, right? So that when you open this file, your computer reads the metadata and goes, oh, I should brighten this image now. So what you're seeing on your image, on your computer when you open a file that's like ISO 3200 here, is being digitally brightened. It's like when you, on your monitor, you change the brightness of your monitor. This is exactly what is happening with these files. So what are the advantages of such a thing? So you have to consider that noise in digital footage comes from two sources. We have analog noise and then we have digital noise. Analog noise is persistent and it is a nature of photography. It happens with every camera. Every camera has analog noise, and that is the noise that, the lights when they hit the sensor, noise happens there. But then you have digital noise that happens as a result of the camera brightening the footage. So in the red Komodo, when you shoot at ISO 800, your noise levels, the analog noise levels will be the same throughout all the ISO ranges. So when you shoot RAW, for example, and you take that footage into DaVinci Resolve, any other NLE, you can change the ISO of the shot. You can change it from 800 up to 6400, right? And the noise that you will see is the same noise that was there before, but it was covered in the shadows, in the noise line, right? So when you're brightening the image, that noise will pop out. You'll see them more. It was hidden before, but when you make it brighter, you will start to see that noise. So that is ISO invariant cameras. One of the benefits of ISO invariant cameras is there is no surprises as far as the noise of the image. So you know that the footage that you shoot, you will always have the same amount of noise. You know how to work with it. There are no surprises. And it should have a relatively better, this is in theory, but they should have better dynamic range than ISO variant cameras. So this ISO variant is the most common system that most cameras use. All DSLRs used it, and now some of the mirrorless cameras also use it. So ISO variant is when the light hits the sensor, when you, for example, change the ISO here from ISO 100 to, for example, ISO 400, the analog amplifier will boost the image at the analog point. It's not a digital brightening, it's happening analogically, right? So the noise characteristics will be different. And that is why these cameras, they tend to have in the specifications when you go on the website and look them up, it says native ISO range, right? You've seen this, you've heard this, right? So for example, the native ISO range is 100 up to 12,800, right? And those the ISOs which go up by one stop, those ISOs are analogically boosted, not digitally boosted. So if you look here, if you look at the noise levels, the native noise of the sensor will be the same across all the ISOs. The digitally boosted noise happens at the ISOs which are non-native, right? But in a variant ISO camera, you will have one ISO which is native, which is 800. The next stop, which is 1600, it's also native, so you have the native noise there. Look at the step in between, 12,500. So this one will have the native noise of ISO 800, but because it is being digitally boosted, it will also have digital noise. So when you compare them, ISO 1250 will be worse than ISO 1600. So you're better off shooting at the one-stop ISO integrals. And by default, when you get a camera, the 1/3 stops of ISOs are actually locked. You have to go into the options and open them. And that's the reason. They want you to use the main stop of ISOs. And that's ISO variant cameras. So then, we have a relatively new technology. In the past 3-4 years, there are cameras that have dual native ISO. These cameras, like the Z8 and the Z9, and I'm pretty sure the Z7 II and Z6 II are also dual native. These cameras are basically invariant ISO cameras, right? So they're the same as this. Except there is a very big difference, is that they have two analog amplifiers in the camera, okay? So they have two native ISOs, one which is usually lower and is good for daylight shooting, where you have lots of light. The other, which is a bit higher, and it is useful for low light situations. The main benefit of dual native ISO cameras is that the two native ISOs theoretically should have the same noise and dynamic range. So you're getting the same noise of ISO 800 at ISO 4000. This is the benefit of a sensor that has dual native ISOs. And when you shoot RAW, for example on the Z8 or the Komodo X is a dual native ISO. When you shoot RAW, when you go into the metadata section, when you want to change the ISO, it only lets you choose between the two ranges that you have. So you can only change between ISO 800 and 3200. Why? Because those shots are using the first analog amplifier that ranges between 800 to 3200, right? It's shot at ISO 800. Everything else is digitally boosted. And then when you shoot a shot that is ISO 4000, you can only change your ISO 4000 and up. You cannot change the circuitry and move it to a lower range of ISOs. So let me show you the benefits of dual native ISO cameras. So this is the Z8. This is a test that I did. If you look at the noise levels here, at ISO 800, they're sitting at 128, right? So the noise floor, as we call it, is at 128. And if you notice here, that it is the same in ISO I don't get the, okay. It is the same in ISO 4000. Now look at the noise floor of ISO 3200. It looks like you just took the slider of exposure and moved it up, because the noise is even and is just rising. That's exactly what's happening. When you shoot at ISO 3200, that's exactly what the camera is doing. It's shooting at ISO 800 and then digitally boosting it. Now look at these shots here. Is this visible from? Okay, yes. So this was shot 8K 30 N-Log, ISO 3200. Look at the 400% zoom of the noise levels there. And then I'm going to show you the same clip in ISO 4000. Now look at the noise. See what happens. This image is a lot cleaner, even though the ISO is higher than 3200. This is against the common belief that the higher the ISO, the more noise. No, with dual native ISO cameras, your best bet is sticking to whatever the closest native ISO is, be it 800 or 4000. If you are close to 4000, like if you're shooting at 2500 or 3200, you're better off moving to 4000, because you get a much cleaner image. And once you denoise this and grade it, let me move it up. So this is 4000 now. Once you grade this and denoise it a little bit, you get a really clean image in dead of the night with no lights. This was something that 3-4 years ago was almost impossible. It's like getting clean images at night with no lights. But that's the benefit of newer technology in modern cameras. Same as this one. You can see the noise pattern in the 400% zoom of 3200 as compared to 4000, if this doesn't flicker. Yeah. And then once you grade it and denoise it, you get a really clean image at 4000. Same as with this one. So that was ISO. Any questions about this particular part? If you have any questions, you can ask me. No? Shall we move on? All right. So let's move on to shutter speed. Now shutter speed is the amount, the time that your sensor is exposed to light. And the longer the duration, the less light that comes in, and the less motion blur that you get for photography. And the longer the amount of the sensor being exposed to light, the more light that you get in, but you also will get more motion blur because things are moving in front of the sensor. Now, let me take you back to when we used to shoot film. So in film cameras, we had what we call the rotary shutter. So instead of the curtain shutters that we have now, this shutter was like a circle that would block the sensor from light. So it would literally, this thing would spin in front of the sensor and block the light from coming in. This was the shutter back then. So back then, they came upon this unspoken rule of 180-degree shutter angle. That is that each frame in the video is exposed for half its duration. To understand why they came upon this common understanding, we have to think of motion blur. So if I start to move my arms around like this, your eyes will naturally see it in a blur, right? My arms are not completely clear when you're looking at them. This is the natural motion blur of our eyes, right? When we see moving subjects, there is motion blur that that our eyes catch. So they came up with this rule to emulate natural motion blur. We should always set the speed of the shutter to 180 degrees back then, right? And nowadays, what you do is you will set your shutter speed to whatever your frame rate is times 2. So twice your FPS, you will use a shutter speed. So if you're shooting at 24 frames per second, you will use 1/48, right? If you're shooting 30, 1/60th. If you're shooting 60, 1/120th, right? And that is to emulate natural motion blur. Still, cinema cameras to this day have an option to change the shutter speed into shutter angle. So when you have the option, you just set the shutter to 180 degrees and the camera will automatically set the shutter speed to twice whatever your frame rate is. If Nikon could put that in there, I would really like it. Get me a call. So, and there are times where you can adjust your exposure with increasing or decreasing your shutter, but it's either for creative reasons. So for example, if you want to get motion blur in your shots, you have to decrease the shutter speed. But sometimes, like people nowadays, they increase their shutter speed to adjust their exposure, right? And they say that people don't really notice the motion blur. And I would somewhat agree. Like I would say half of people, like they don't really see the unnatural motion blur in videos that are shot with really high shutter speeds, right? But there's one other side effect to using really high shutter speed for video, and that is that even the smallest shake will get captured. So even if you're using a gimbal that is supposed to stabilize it, there are still small shakes that happen. And higher shutter speeds will capture that, so it will look jerky, right? But when you use the 180-degree shutter rule, all of that movement is mellowed out. So there is less of the shaky jitteriness of a high shutter speed video. Now here is a very young Mohammed, 6 years ago. Man, I had so much hair. Showing you motion blur. So this is shot in 24 frames per second with 1/10th of a shutter speed, and you can see my arms. That is unnatural motion blur. It's completely blurry, right? So when you reduce the shutter, this is what happens in your video. And then the other way is when you shoot with higher shutter speeds. You see how overly smooth it is, and there is no motion blur when I'm moving my arms around. And that is what we call the unnatural motion blur. So we got all of that covered. So why am I telling you all of this? Why am I talking about the exposure triangle? I thought this was about using filters for videography. Well, the reason I'm telling you all of this is in order to get the right exposure in videography, there are a lot more rules and a lot more limitations rather than instead of like photography. Because in photography, you always have raw files. You can go in there, you can change your ISO, you can change your exposure to however you feel like it. But for video, you're a lot more restricted. A lot of cameras only shoot 8 bits, so you're very limited as to what you can do with the exposure. Even cameras that shoot 10-bit, not all of them have that I guess, leniency, right? That latitude. But then you also have to keep in mind that for ISO, you have to keep it closest to the native ISO of your camera. So you have to learn your camera. You have to know what ISO works best for your camera and stick to it. you have to keep your shutter at 180 degrees. And then you have to set your aperture according to the depth of field that you want for that shot. For whatever creative reason that you want, you set your shutter speed, or your aperture to that. So then what happens? How can I expose my image correctly? So look at this shot here. This was shot with the Nikon Z8. This is 4K 60. So my shutter speed is 1/120th, ISO 800, which is the first native ISO of the Z8. So in order to get my image exposed evenly, I had to bump up my aperture to f14. So I went all the way to f14. And as you can see, there is a deep depth of field behind her. All of these trees are in focus. Even those buildings which are far away, they're not completely clear, but they're not blurred out either. So this image to me looked flat. I wanted to open up the aperture and focus on my subject, right? I wanted to bring more attention to her rather than this whole thing. So what can I do? I have to open up my aperture, right? So let's go to the next slide. So this is that shot at f2.8. Once I opened up the aperture from f14 to f2.8, this is what happened. How can I fix this? Now I cannot change the shutter because I don't want to have unnatural motion blur when she's walking. My ISO is already at the minimum, ISO 800. And I just changed my aperture to f2.8. So what's the solution? Filters, exactly. So this is when we get to neutral density ND filters. ND filters are basically sunglasses for your camera. You put them in front of your lens to cut out the amount of light that is coming through the glass, the lens. So for that shot right there, I put on this, where is it? This one. The variable ND filter. Like this. I put it on in front of the lens, and so this is a variable one. The strength of the amount of ND can be changed. So I put it at around 4.5 stops. Where is it? Right here. So I put it around 4.5 stops in order to get even exposure on that shot, which is, let me go back, right here. So now I'm getting a thin depth of, oh, don't go back. No. So now I'm getting a thin depth of field. All the focus is on her. The background is blurred out. And all of that is possible because I put on an ND filter in front of the lens. Now, okay, so let's talk about how you can put on filters on your lenses. So if you look at any lens, at the barrel of any lens, there is a number there which next to it, there's a circle with a line through it. And that is the size of your filter thread, right? So for this lens, it is a 72. So this lens, this particular lens has a 72 filter thread size, 72 millimeters, right? This one is a 62. This one here, oh wow, that's dirty. This one is an 82 mil. So this one has a really big barrel, really big front elements. So then your filters will need to match the size of your lens's filter thread. So if you have a lens that has a 72 mil filter thread, you have to get a 72 mil filter, right? But then you have all these lenses and they all have different filter threads and it gets expensive. You have to keep buying NDs and different filters for each size. Well, no. What I would recommend is find whichever of your lens has the biggest filter thread, buy a filter for that size, and then use what we call step-up rings. So a step-up ring is basically a ring that takes the size of your lens and bumps it up to a bigger filter size. So for example, this one here is a 72 to 82 step-up ring. So you just attach it to your lens like this. And now your lens has an 82 mil filter thread. So you can attach 82 mil filters like this to it. No, is it going through? No. Am I doing it the wrong way? Okay. Like so. So you can either go with the largest filter thread that you have of your lens, or I would recommend that you go with 82 mil filters and then buy step-up rings for each of your lenses, because 82 is the most common filter size, the larger filter size that you can find almost all filters for, and they're not hard to find because there are like 85 and 92, 105 filters, but they're really expensive and they're hard to find. So my recommendation is, if you don't have a lens that is larger than 82, get 82 mil lenses, filters, and then use step-up rings to attach them to your lens. Or, this is where we get to the Revo ring. So a few years ago, a company called H&Y came out with a filter that kind of revolutionized how we use filters nowadays. And they basically took the idea of a variable size and brought it to filters. So the Revo ring right here, as you can see it in the picture, can actually change sizes. So this variable ND here that I have can attach to any lens between 67 mil up to 82. So any of your lenses which have a filter thread between 67 and 82, you can attach this filter to. So 67, 72, and 82, three filters, three very common filter sizes. And using it is as simple as, well, I need to put this down like this. So there's this mechanism in the back. You hold it with one hand, you twist it like this. Get it to the size of your lens's opening of the barrel, and then put it on top, like so. Oh, messed it up. And let go. And it's connected. Just like that. So, with a Revo ring like this, you can just get one filter and be able to use it for all your lenses. And they come in smaller sizes as well. What's the, Shaji, what's the smaller range for the Revo ring?
36 models.
Okay, 36 to 60.
We have 36 to 46, then 50 to 77, then 67.
Okay.
82 to 95.
So they have the 95 as well?
95.
Okay.
It is 82 to 95.
Okay.
We have all of them here.
Okay.
If someone wants to test and have a look at hands-on, they can only do that.
Perfect. Awesome. So that is where a Revo ring is very useful, because first, when you start, where's my step-up ring? Here. when you start buying lenses, you will quickly have tens and tens of step-up rings, and you will lose them, and they will get stuck to your lens. If they're not good quality, sometimes it will get stuck to the lens and the filter, and you have to use an iron bar to get them out. So they're just a pain. And with the Revo ring, that hassle is reduced, because you can just take this and put it on any other lens. And all you need to do, if you have multiple lenses, if you have lenses that are smaller, you just get the smaller size of it. All right, there's a mess up here now. Okay, so we're gonna do a little spot the difference game. Now I'm gonna play 2 shots, and I want you to tell me what are the differences between them, okay? So this is the first shot right here. Let's call this shot A. And this is the second shot. Let's call this shot B. So, do you want to see them again?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go back to shot A. And shot B.
Oh, yeah. The rocks.
Lighting.
The light on that.
Subject.
What's the difference? The lighting?
First one was brighter.
First one was brighter. Okay.
Direct.
Direct light. Anything else? Anything else you notice? Let me play this one again. This might not be the best environment for it, but look at the background is my...
Highlights.
Okay. What happened to the highlights?
Cut it down. Blackness.
What?
Blackness.
Okay. Well, you're cheating. All right. So if you look at these 2 shots right here, yes, you're correct. The Roxy is the main one. That was the only difference. But they're both shot at exactly the same settings with exactly the same lens, literally 10 seconds apart from each other. The lighting was the same. So I just put one small light on top of the camera, and it was pointed directly at her. So what happened? Why is the second video darker? You can see that, right? It doesn't look like it's one direct light pointed at her anymore. So, what we're using here is called a black mist filter. That's the only thing that changed between the 2 shots. The amount of the light was the same. The exposures were the exposure settings were all identical. The only thing is I slapped on a black mist filter in front of it. And now the second shot doesn't look like a YouTube video anymore, because the first shot here, it looks like I just put one small light and just pointed right, like I'm doing a vlog or something, right? So the effects of a black mist filter. Let's go back to the basics. Modern digital cameras have very, very sharp sensors, and they have very, very sharp lenses. So the whole thing is just sharp, 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 sharp. But when you're in the cinema world or television, anything, you don't always want very sharp footage. Sometimes softness is a character that you actually want, right? And this is why some cinema lenses are actually not that sharp. They're designed to not be very sharp. They're sharp where it matters. The resolution is there, but it's not overly sharp. There is a video look, and I know this term has been massacred, but there's a film look, right? And the black mist filter, its goal is to make these sharp, modern sensors and lenses look a bit more film-like. So let me grab it right here, the black mist filter. Now this is brand new. So right here is a black mist filter. And if you look closely, there are these tiny speckles on it. This helps this filter diffuse light in a different manner, and that is how you get a shot that looks like this. So, three things are different about this shot as opposed to the first shot. First, that direct light that is pointed at her face is diffused a lot more in this shot rather than the first shot. So the light is diffused, it's not as like on point in your face. Obviously, you can do this with diffused lighting if you take diffusers, put them there, but good luck putting diffusers in JBR without the security telling you to get away. So the first thing is the light is completely, not completely, but a lot diffused. The second thing, look at the highlights over here. The highlights in the background over there, as opposed to the first shot. Do you notice anything about the background blur, the bokeh, the lights? What do you notice? The thing that is happening is an effect called halation. That is when bright sources of light have this glow around them. So I don't know if it's really visible with this, but basically there are lights around, there are these glowing parts around the highlights that are coming out of it. And that is also happening to her skin. So the halation is also happening on the skin. So what happens is the skin becomes smoother, but it retains the sharpness that it had before. So the parts that are meant to be sharp, the eyes, the eyebrows, they're all sharp, but her skin is a lot softer because the light is being first diffused and it's being halated, right? So these are the main two things that a black mist does. What I like to use black mist for is to just remove some of that overly sharpness of modern lenses, because sometimes you shoot a portrait, like a close-up or whatever, with for example, this 85 right here, and it's too sharp. Like their skin is just like too much, right? So you want to soften that, make it more glowy, make it more dreamy. That's when you use a black mist, just to get a more filmic look. Black mist filters are extremely common and they're used in most productions. The fact that only recently they've become more common is because filter making companies didn't really start mass producing them until maybe 6-7 years ago, when they become mass massively produced. So that is why we have easy access to black mist filters now. Now, black mist filters also have strengths. So this is a quarter strength. There is 1/8 as well, which has less of this effect. So the stronger it becomes, the stronger the halation. So you'll see the like big glowy edges around all the highlights. And the stronger the diffusion. So there is 1/8, quarter, half, and I think there is also a 1, which is just super crazy looking. So I want to show you an example of a TV show which heavily uses black mist to set its mood. Second. Okay, so this is from Peaky Blinders. And as you watch this scene, I want you to take a look at the lighting, specifically right here. As you can see, as you continue, you'll see more and more of it. Like right here. See that? The reflection of the light extends because of the nature of a black mist filter. And black mist is used like this across all productions to get that filmic look. Let me go here. Here's another clip where you can see the effect of black mist. So let me change this to extend. Oh, come on. So this is a shot without black mist. This next shot is with black mist. Notice a few things. Notice the halation on her buttons, on Dubai frame, and also look how softer her skin becomes, even though there's harsh shadows on her face. Do you see it? So even during daylight, black mist is very useful for creating a look that is more film-like. So another thing about black mist, which I forgot to mention about, is it increasingly reduces the contrast. So it brings up the shadows and also brings down the highlights a little bit. So it has that faded look which you would get from if you use the film camera. So this whole session has been about how to set your mood right when you want to capture an image. Think about what you want to convey, what stories you want to tell, what feeling you want to give, and then use the tools available to you to best convey that feeling in that image. And that's all for my presentation today. If you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them. Thank you. No questions?
Don't you use magnetic filters?
Sorry?
Magnetic filters.
Yes, I do. Okay. I would recommend them, yes. So let me actually demonstrate that for you. A second. Okay, then let me get this. So one of the ease of use of the HNY system is that they also have this magnetic system where you can, so this is the basic Revo ring. This one doesn't have any filters inside it. It's just a clear ring, just basically an attachment. And then you get one of the several options that they have. For example, this is a variable ND, and then you just clip it on like that. And boom, it's connected. Did I correct it? Did it connect it the right way? Yes. Or is it the other way? Sorry, yes. And it's just that easy. So I used square filter system before, and they're kind of a pain to use because you have to slot the square filters in, and then you have to be careful not to break them because sometimes they get stuck and you're like, I don't want to break this. But these are really super easy to use and handle. They also have, Shaji gave me this magnetic matte box, which just as easily just goes on top of the ND filter. Just open this up. So this is a matte box which can magnetically attach to either the Revo ring or the ND, the magnetic ND which is on top, and just goes on like that. If you've ever used matte boxes before, you know how easy this is because matte boxes used to be such a pain to put on your camera. They would either have a 95 or a 105, and then you had to find step-up rings to attach to it. Sometimes you couldn't find step-up rings. You had to put like cloths over it so light didn't leak in through the hole. So this new system is a really, really easy way to just attach how many ever filters you want in front of the camera with a magnetic system. And I was here for Mohannad's workshop, and he does landscape photography in the Arctic. And I asked them to make sure, and he's like, these are very strong, even in harsh weather conditions, they stay locked. So just as easy as that, you can remove this, and it just comes off like that. So yeah, that's it.
One more question.
Sure.
Can you use LD and this filter together?
Yes. So.
Reduce the quality?
So for that, I think you have to get the Revo ring, which has a slot for rotating filters, and then slot the black mist through that, and then attach this in front of it. Yeah, exactly.
So it does not reduce the quality, the sharpness?
The which one? So filters like the black mist or the ND?
Black mist.
Black mist reduces the sharpness. Yes, it does. That's one of its jobs.
Yeah, on the highlights level, right?
Yes. Well, no. So it doesn't get rid of micro contrast. It gets rid of how can I say, like artificial sharpness, like the type of sharpness where you see on like the skin is like perforating, like, you know, that kind of thing is just reduced. The micro contrast is still there. It's just like smooths out everything around it. It's like in Photoshop when you like on the sharpened mask. You know, slide it over and you get the you know, lines around it. That is exactly the job of a black mist. Yeah. All right. Anything else? Any questions? No? Thank you so much. Thank you for coming. I made a mess here.
Thank you very much.
Shaji. Appreciate it.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah. So it was a great experience for us to get to know about some of the tricks and tips from Mohammed. And Joanna, we want to have a masterclass.
Yes, okay.
Because
To be honest, I learned a lot today. I was telling Mark while he was discussing, why you're not telling me this, why you're not telling me this.
Yay! So I'm going to get a good customer today. So guys, like, you know, like if you want to know more about this all filter system, you're most welcome to our place, to our office. We can sit, chat, have a coffee, and discuss about the complete range of filters and you know, the kind of usage of them. Or we have everything displayed over here. So if you have some time, we can even discuss about that. And thank you very much, Mohammed. I heard you really loved the system, and
Thank you, Shaji.
thank you.
Appreciate it.
Amazing. It's
Thank
a
you so much.
great stuff. And guys, please join for other events. Joanna, you can also register and join. Hello.
Listen, I'm listening.
Yeah. So tomorrow is what? Tomorrow we are going to have the old man. He's coming over here to talk about 35 different species of owls.
Wow.
So he move around the world just to shoot only owls.
Wow.
Yeah. So there are some, you know, like specific people, like, you know, they really want to have the best out of the best kind of stuff. Okay. So thank you very much, Mohammed. Thank you very much, Nikon Middle East, to have Mohammed here, and we'll do a lot of things together.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
For
Appreciate
sure,
it.
100%. You know,
Thank you,
we'll
Shaji.
try to create something. So let's take a group picture. Please come. Please.